All right, let's do it live on a Monday edition of the program. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. Well, hey, it's you're 5-3 through 8, and that is the positive. You're well on line of where you wanted to be, trying to be a 10-win football team. You were down there, and I think that's probably where we need to start for, and you and about 12,000 of your closest friends. But beyond that, in terms of just what it was like down there from a condition standpoint, Z, what did you encounter?
It was brutal. It was not a great environment to take in a football game in the sense that incredibly windy. But it was almost schizophrenic. One second the sun would be out, the next second it would be raining, then it would be hailing, then it would be snowing, then the sun would come out, and we would go through it again. So it was a very obviously difficult environment. It affected both teams in this one throwing the football. In fact, going towards the dog pound end, you could just tell the quarterbacks really had no chance getting the ball down the field. And I believe, as somebody there, now, Grant, did not affect the Raiders like it affected us. But the ball was moving even on 10, 15-yard throws. And you could see it. Like, when the wind gets it and it does
like
this. Elevation, and then moving out away to the left, so towards the home sideline where I was standing. Like the pass that Carr had on one, he had Ruggs wide open where Denzel kind of passed him on. It was the only deep. Yes. It's the only deep pass I think anybody threw in the game, honestly. Yeah. And that ball was bouncing around in the sky. I mean, it had no chance. You could see it just got in the jet streams and was crazy. So the weather certainly was a concern. I don't think that there's any doubt about the fact that it had a big impact on this game. It was a concern for both teams. I mean, you look at the fact only 2 passes in the game were attempted of more than 20 yards in the air. One by Baker, one by Derek Carr. Something that I found so interesting, and tell me what you think about it, because I thought, as I said, the weather played a huge factor. Derek Carr, 12 of his 15 completions came between the numbers. They worked the middle of the field. Shortest passes, you're not getting the wind involved as much, just from the pocket, operating. This absolutely stunned me. Not when I went back and watched it, but it stunned me. The Browns had 4 completions. 4 of Baker's 12 completions were between the numbers. 8 were outside the numbers. That's a stunning
honestly
thing to
what
me.
It felt like to me. That's what it felt like watching it. I mean, it seemed like the only success that we had, and this has been, kind of a theme all season, has been on the boots and playing to just an edge of the field. I wouldn't have had it much more than that. I don't know that I would have had them that high, but I wouldn't have had us much more than that. It's the way it felt watching it, that everything was to the perimeter, and that was the way that you went with a lot of those boots. I'd be curious on air travel in terms of how far the average ball traveled out of Baker's hands versus Derek Carr's hands. This was, they out-ussed us.
They out-ussed us. Just real quick.
We have done this to several teams, and they did it to us. Go ahead.
We had 10 pass attempts of more than 10 yards in the air. They had exactly 4. So the air yards were lower for them than us, significantly so. But, they out-ussed us. That was my post-game analysis. Said we've seen this formula. You get a turnover early, you take the lead early, and you just wear them down running the football. They ran for 208 yards in this game. Josh Jacobs with a career high in terms of carries and rushing yards for the Raiders. And this was a team that hadn't been able to run the ball. And for them to come into Cleveland on a day that dictated the better running team was going to win, you'd have to think we had the advantage. Number 5 run defense coming into this game. An elite rushing offense coming into this game. And yet they dominated the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line, which was without a couple starters, by the way, dominated the point of attack. And it gets me back to something that I had mentioned in last week's show. Defensively, it felt like our strategy had started to become, let's let them run as many plays as possible, or make them. Don't give up big plays, and we didn't in this game. There were no big plays. Yeah. And then we'll get a turnover, or Miles will do something superhuman. Well, 2 of the last 3 games, we haven't generated a turnover, and Miles was banged up in this one and thus could not do something superhuman. But we have forced,
almost got him.
We forced 1 punt in the last 2 games, Beau. We have forced
that's not gonna get it
one
done, brother.
punt in the last 2 games. No defense in the NFL has allowed more first downs than the Cleveland Browns. And that, to me, if I took anything away, this was a sloppy game. And this was one of those, you look at the box score, you say, oh, wow, you really shut down Carr. If you watch this game, the Browns couldn't get off the field. They possessed the football for 37-plus minutes. 15 minutes, a full quarter more than the Browns. You can't win that way. And yet, you would say Harrison Bryant doesn't fumble. The ball doesn't hit the ground, it's touchdown. Chief catches the crosser. We had self-inflicted wounds and still only lost by 10. But the issues that we had seen percolating defensively came to the forefront. Yep. And in another just kind of strange twist, we either score 30-plus or we score single digits, which is bizarre. 5 games in the 30s, 3 in single digits.
If we don't dictate right now, if we don't dictate the game to the opponent, we have a hard time. In the games when we have, we score in the 30s and we're undefeated. In the games that we haven't, we're not out of the 10s and we're without a win. So in all instances when we have to chase, we're not great at it. Now we're good. We were able to do it against Cincinnati. You hope that it would carry over onto this game against the Raiders. It did not. And so you will go into the midway point at 5-3. As we get into the Ohio Business Machines Hot Topics, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns, all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. And we do have some breaking news here in the building. We are working remotely today as an organization, although I see you are in there, sir, but the rest of the organization working remotely. And the statement from the team is this: the Cleveland Browns conducting football meetings remotely today. This morning, an active player who has not been in the facility today reported that he is experiencing COVID-19 related symptoms. While there have been no positive test results among players, coaches, or staff members, the team decided to host meetings remotely to exercise the appropriate level of caution. And so this is the reality of where we are. Amidst a pandemic, you're going to have these things, and we're having it here in our organization, although it's key at this point, no positive tests. So that is positive.
It is. It is very positive yet, but again, we'll watch it. The good news is, as you mentioned, we're on our bye week this week, and so we will have to just kind of see how this ultimately plays out. And by the way, this bye week couldn't have come now. Add another reason to the list. This bye week couldn't have come at a better time for this football team. We're banged up.
Yep.
We need it. We got to get healthy. We got to get guys back, which is apparent, even though I think Chris Hubbard played well. Kareem Hunt's fighting out there. But getting Nick Chubb back will be huge. Getting Austin Hooper back. Austin Hooper may not have put up the gaudy stats, but boy, when you threw him the ball on third down, he caught it. His blocking, I think, has been missed significantly on the ground game.
Yep.
And now we have Miles banged up. We've got this issue that's arisen. So it's a good thing I think the Browns are getting a little bit of a pause here.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And I think you also saw in this game, just the lack of the threat of Odell Beckham Jr. as well. Like, just not a fear from the Raiders' standpoint that something was going to happen down the field. They didn't have to worry about that. So some of that's weather too.
Yes.
I mean, the wind was brutal, as you articulated, but that the deep threat that Odell provides not being there allowed for a Vegas defense that hadn't been great. It's one of the worst defenses in football to play at a really high level. I mean, it allowed that Abraham kid to just fly around like a maniac, and he played like a maniac a lot of the game, right on the edge. But it allowed for that. There was really no reason for them to fear anything deep down the field. And again, some of that is going into that dog pound end zone. It was clear you couldn't throw that way, but going the other way, we weren't able to take the top off, and I think it impacted the way they played us and what we were able to do.
It did, and we again though still had our chances. Offensively, it comes down to execution. It comes down to when there are, guys open, getting them the football, and then them catching the football and generating that push on the offensive line. And that's something that I felt like was a little bit of a struggle in this game. The running, unless we really got out on the edges, it didn't seem like there was a ton of room to run. And when you look at the Raiders, and you look at Josh Jacobs and their team, for example, they averaged 4.6 yards a carry in this game against the Browns, 3 yards after contact. So they were getting 1.6 yards down the field before taking contact. The Browns, 4.6 and 2.9. Basically the same thing. They were right there. Kareem Hunt, though, was averaging 3.3 yards after contact per carry, 4.7 total. So the push was similar. They just possessed the ball, Bo. They had the football. And you can't play offense when you can't get off the field.
No.
And you can't convert yourself and extend drives. Browns, 3 of 10 on third down. They were 8 of 14 on third. They were 10 of 16 if you add in fourth downs. The Browns would have been 5 of 12, so under 50%. They were 10 of 16. 10 of 16.
Yeah.
They're not going to get off the field there. You actually out-yard per played them, 4.7 to 4.4. They ran 71 plays. The Browns ran 47. You can't win.
Yeah, can't win. Can't do it that way. And look, on one hand, glasses half full, 5-3 at the halfway point. It
Great.
feels great. You're in a great spot to go chase the postseason, which is what the stated goal of this organization was trying to get into the postseason. That was the goal. On the other side of it, however, now others have entered the fray. Miami won. The Colts won. The Raiders won. I mean, heck, I was listening to the owner of the Texans this morning on his radio down in Houston. He said, "Hey, we think we can chase it. There's an extra playoff spot. We got enough talent on this team. We think we can chase it." They're 1-6. I mean, there's going to be teams now who are engaged. And had you gone into this break at 6-2, your margin would have just been so much greater in the second half. Now you have to win against every team who you are better than or equal to from a talent standpoint. You have 3 monster games left against teams that can win the Super Bowl, the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Titans, and every other game, in order to make sure you're in, has got to be a win. If you had won yesterday, you could have had an upset at Philly or Houston. Now you really have to take care of your business.
If you win yesterday, you're 6-2. You're currently the 5 seed in the AFC. The loss makes you currently the 7 seed in the AFC, a half game ahead of, as you mentioned, the Raiders and the Dolphins. So you could have been at 6-2, 2 games in the win column and 1 game in the loss column better than the teams currently in 8-9, which means a game and a half lead, as you said, hiccup insurance. Look, we all would have signed up for 5-3 right now. At the beginning of the season, you would have said 5-3 at the halfway mark. I'm in. Absolutely. That's where you want to be. However, there are trends that are disturbing. And I think right now, as you're seeing teams, and we'll get into that as we go forward, teams making a lot of moves at the deadline, especially on defense. It's clear we have issues on defense. We need a free safety, I would say. We need somebody on the back end to play alongside Ronnie Harrison. That was supposed to be Grant Delpit. So he will be back next year. So the idea of making a trade for a good free safety also seems a little bit, I don't know that I foresee that for us. Linebacker. I don't know if I foresee a trade at linebacker for us. Pass rusher. That would be the one area that we need help on the defensive line. But I think we as Browns fans, and again, this is not scores. This is not me saying, oh, I know we're doing a bunch of stuff, or I know that we're not. I don't know. But we were never supposed to win the Super Bowl this year. The goal is to try to get to the playoffs and lay groundwork to get there. And the idea that you're going to try to plug every hole in one season, I just don't see that being the MO of the guys running this organization. They are steady. They are not going to make panic moves. So those who want to see a lot of activity might end up being disappointed. Yes, the Steelers made a move. Yes, the Saints have made a move. The Titans. The Steelers right now are the 1 seed in the AFC. The Saints believe that this is their window with Drew Brees to win a Super Bowl this year. The Steelers also probably believe that with Ben Roethlisberger. And the Titans were in the AFC Championship game a year ago and have Super Bowl aspirations as well. Not to say that we don't aspire to win the Super Bowl. Of course we do. That's what every team is playing for. But I don't think the Browns feel that their window is 2020 or bust, and that they're going to compromise what their plan has been all along for 2021 and 2022.
No. Be part of one of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL. Join the Browns season ticket member waitlist today. The best chance of securing tickets for all home games in future seasons. Deposits start at just $100 per seat. Reserve your spot today by visiting clevelandbrowns.com. Much more on this loss to the Raiders in the halfway mark of the season. Off and running here on a Monday. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. odds are you're going to be spending a lot of this winter in your home, and next spring for that matter. So let's talk about kitchen remodeling. Believe it or not, it's a great time to remodel your kitchen. Unless you've done it recently, your kitchen is probably outdated. You might think a new, modern, high-quality kitchen is out of your price range. At Northeast, you get high-quality cabinets, 60 to 70% less, and all of the upgrades, solid wood, full extension, drawer glides, cushion closed drawers and doors, they all come standard. It's really simple. Make an appointment, bring in some basic measurements, and one of the kitchen designers will walk you through the process on an interactive big screen. The appointment and design are free. There's no obligation. They will let you take it with you, and there's 0% financing available. Go to northeastfactorydirect.com or visit West 140th Street in Cleveland, Lakeland Boulevard in Euclid, or Freeway Drive in Macedonia to check them out and do it today. You know, the other thing, Z, that jumped out to me watching this game is, and this is, you're up. This works on like the trending of the season. You know, you talked about how our plan was, okay, nothing big, and then let's make a play. Miles, in other words, come make a play. And he almost had one yesterday. Car incredible. The car didn't drop it when Miles swatted at it. He almost had another one. But aside from Miles and Denzel, who's playing at a Pro Bowl type level, the playmaking, it's not there defensively. There's not dynamic playmaking happening.
Ronnie Harrison, I would include.
Harrison. My fault. Harrison, of course. Almost had another one.
Another
yesterday.
pick six,
He's
almost.
around the ball.
Listen, if he starts catching it, he'd have 3.
He'd have 3. Yeah, he'd be working like an all-pro at that point if he were able to be like another Alabama guy, Minka Fitzpatrick, who takes him to the house. But he's always around the ball. But when Miles went down, there was just no – and I realize Olivia got a sack. That was great, but there was just no pushback up front without Miles on our defensive line. There just wasn't.
No, Olivia had 2 sacks in the game, which was great to see, working against their backup right tackle. But then they went to their third-string right tackle, and we couldn't do anything. We couldn't disrupt them at all. They were able to do whatever they wanted to do, and it was frustrating. Derek Carr had lost 10 straight games in climates similar to what they played in yesterday. 10 straight he had lost. This is not a team that was supposed to win this game, especially not the way that they did it. They played a brand of football
not in these conditions
that they had not played all year, and frankly, it looked like they were incapable of playing. But we're getting and I realize B.J. Goodson's got 2 interceptions on the season, but we're not getting, it doesn't feel like anyway, playmaking from our linebackers. They're always a step short, a second late, just not where they need to be. They're there to make tackles after people pick up first downs. We miss so many tackles, it feels like, on running plays where we hit the person at the line of scrimmage or in the hole. I mean, teams should not be able to run inside screens on 3rd and 17. They should not be able to run the football on 3rd and 7s and 8s and just pick it up like so easily.
No, and that's what's happened. And look, as I think you made a really good point. We've talked about it before. The stated goal here is not to go win the Super Bowl. Before the year, it's not like we were a team that people thought would be in the hunt for the Super Bowl. A couple of teams in our division are, and they look it. But if you think about what Andrew Berry did in one offseason with Kevin Stefanski in terms of fixing the offensive line and tight ends, now you give him another offseason, and let's get to work on this defense. In between now and then, you make the playoffs, and that's pretty sweet. And that's still where you are, with this team. It was tough. It was tough to be bullied. Let me ask you this. Do you think that was a game yesterday that whichever team scored the first touchdown was going to win? Whichever team got up by more than a field goal was going to win? It almost felt like it was impossible to come back or have any momentum. Your margin was none. It's what it felt like watching it.
That's why I thought Jarvis's touchdown was huge. I think if you took that touchdown, went up 4, it would have felt massive. Now, you had a great goal line stand, and I really appreciate the resolve the guys showed down there, forcing the field goal that made it 16-6. But as I pointed out to Gibbe during the broadcast on one of my sideline hits, 3 of the 22 points scored in the game were scored going to the dog pound.
Yeah.
So we needed, I felt, to have a good lead going into the fourth quarter.
Well, they said on the broadcast, and I don't know who was doing the play-by-play, but on the television broadcast, and Spielman said that's not a bad idea. He said, is this a situation where you take the end zone instead of the ball at half? And Spielman's like, well, I don't know if you'd ever want to give up a possession, but at the same time, like, whoever had the ball going opposite dog pound in the fourth quarter, it was a tremendous advantage. It appeared so on TV. And you just kind of proved that it was.
It felt that way, and I was actually surprised. There were a couple, not surprised, I don't think that's the right word. You're trying to set things up. The wind was an issue, but I did think if there was going to be any shots taken, we had a play where we had 2nd and 1, I want to say at midfield, going with the wind. I thought that would be a place to maybe try a shot, but we ended up running and picking up, I think, literally 1.5 yards for the first down. And we never really took that shot. The one other time that we had a chance to take a shot was Abraham jumped off sides, and it wasn't open, but it's a free play. So what if they pick it? Throw it. Nothing bad can happen. The worst case scenario, you gain 5 yards. But there were never those shots taken, and I really thought it was incumbent upon us. That's why I thought the third quarter was so pivotal in the sense that we needed, I felt, to score in the third quarter and to really kind of, separate ourselves prior to going in. And so you hoped that you were going to be able to get that touchdown, but that was your only possession of the third quarter. One possession in the third quarter. That was all you got. And that was, I think that was a challenge. That was a real challenge.
Yeah, it was. We'll have the Hoff We'll ask the Hoff his impressions of this game and what to make of this team at the halfway mark. We do that coming up next as we have the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily coming up next. You listen to CBD on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If a car, truck, or motorcycle accident caused you injury, call the injury lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. As we welcome in the Hoff, the great Joe Thomas, for the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily. Hoff, good talking to you, my friend. This was, I'll just put it to you this way. When the game's over, your thoughts are what?
Well, my thoughts were that we let one kind of slip away. I thought, when you look at what was the biggest issue, because after you come out of a loss, you're always trying to say, all right, what was my biggest issue? What was my biggest takeaway? And I think from a defensive standpoint, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. They allowed the Raiders to hold the ball most of the game. But my one takeaway on defense that they really need to improve on is the gotta-have-it situations, your fourth down defense, and then your third down defense. When you need to get off the field, you need to be able to force them to punt, to get the ball back to your offense. The Browns weren't able to do it consistently. And when you're in a game that's bad weather like that, the team that usually has the ball and runs the most plays a lot of times is the team that wins the game.
It is. And, Joe, when you're on an offense that's able to control the clock and to put 15 minutes more of possession between you and your opponent, what does that feel like? And is that where you start to, does that break the spirit? The other team can't get off the field. We're just going to keep running it. We're going to keep picking up first downs and basically control the game.
Yeah, it does. And I remember being on the offensive side of it, not a whole lot in my career, but a few times, and you're just sitting there and you've got the cold weather and you're sitting on the sidelines getting cold thinking, come on, defense, let's go, get the ball. We just need the ball back because especially early in the game, there was a couple times that the Browns, had some drops that were big in the game. And you feel like, all right, we're getting them figured out. We know what we can do. We get to the sideline, the coach gives you maybe 3 or 4 plays we want to get to because how the defense is playing you, we feel like we can really take advantage of them. And so you're just itching to get that football back. And when the other team just continues to convert third down after third down and then fourth down, it really is a little demoralizing. And sitting in that cold weather, you get up and you're kind of moving around on the sideline, you're getting in front of those heaters, you're trying to do what you can to keep your mind involved, but your body warm. And it becomes a struggle. And then all of a sudden you get the ball back. And sometimes it's like, it's been so long since you've touched the ball the last time that you get a little bit out of rhythm and you kind of lose the pace and the rhythm and the tempo that you want to play with on offense to try to take advantage of those things that you feel like you can beat the defense with in the first place.
Joe, you felt the effects of no Miles at his full capacity, right? And it's probably it's unrealistic to think that he's going to wreck a game every time out. But the injuries obviously slowed him, played about half the snaps, and you felt it. Did not get the defensive line push that we had previously. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I very well may be, but for people who say, well, what's Miles been doing if he doesn't have sacks? Well, he's occupying 3 people. Now all of a sudden, if 3 people don't have to be occupied by Myles Garrett, they can block their own guys. You can double team someone else, and you could feel the effects of that. It felt like our defensive line really felt the effects of no Myles Garrett yesterday.
Yeah, having Myles out there really affects the game in 2 ways. One, the obvious way is when he makes the big plays, the sack fumbles that he's become known for. But really, he's a guy that when he's on the field, he affects an offense in a more subtle way. And you touched on it. It was the attention that they have to give to you and the fact that it speeds up the quarterback's progression. It speeds up his timing in the pocket. And a lot of times, even if Myles isn't close, he's going to be throwing the football quicker than normal because he's worried about Myles. He's thinking about it. That was been drilled into his head all week. When Myles is on the field, you got to get rid of the football. You got to go through your progressions quicker because he knows that Myles is going to be breathing down his neck on every play. And so when he's not out there, it allows Derek Carr to be able to kind of sit back there, survey the field, go to his first, second, third read, and all of a sudden, like we saw in this game, take off and run for it. When you go through all your progressions and you search both sides of the field and coverage is sort of reasonable, all of a sudden you're taking off and now you're converting with your legs. And for a quarterback like Derek Carr, who's not Lamar Jackson, but he can still get out there and convert a first down, that can be demoralizing for a defense where you feel like, man, we did our job. We covered finally. We did a better job. And then the quarterback kind of steals a cheap third down conversion. So I think not having Myles out there was really tough. And it showed being only 3 out of 10. The Raiders converted 8 out of 14 third downs, which is a really high rate in the NFL.
Yeah, and 2 of 2 on fourth down, which makes them 10 of 16 on, conversion scenarios. And it's tough, as you mentioned, for this offense to get going because they frankly did not have the football. And in a game like this, in these kind of conditions, It just felt like it was set up. If you said this game, the winning team was only going to score 16, you would have thought that would bode well for the Cleveland Browns in this environment. When you watched this game, let's focus on our offense now. What did you see from the offense that they couldn't get out of first gear? Because, Joe, it's crazy. 5 games with more than 30 points, 3 games with single digits. We haven't scored in the teens or the 20s once.
Right. And it's starting to be a little bit of a pattern, and it's a little bit alarming. You know, you're playing good teams, and I think the Raiders are a good team, but going back to the Ravens and the Steelers, and you don't get much offensive output, right? Under 7 points. And then you play bad teams and you boat race them, which is great. Like, we love smoking the Cowboys and rushing for 300 yards, but having a little bit more consistency and being able to be closer and score more points against the better defenses and the better teams in the NFL is what you want to see, because the second half of the season after this bye, it's all about the playoff run. And right now we're in a good position, but we're going to have to play better on offense overall to be able to consider ourselves legitimate playoff contenders.
Yeah, the pattern is pretty much there. That when this team right now gets behind, or allows the opponent to force its will upon us offensively, we do not have a counter. Now it's worth pointing out, of course, that we do not have Nick Chubb, we do not have Austin Hooper, we do not have Wyatt Teller. So that's 3 guys who are playing, either all pro or, certainly Hooper is a former Pro Bowler, and I think we feel him. Nathan brought this up earlier. We really feel it in the blocking game with what Hoop's able to do in the run blocking game, and you feel that. And so some of that will change just with those guys back healthy, right, Joe? But then beyond that, you do have to figure out a way to play to this standard, and the reason for that is you have 3 games left against Super Bowl contenders in Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee. Other than that, every game is either equal to or lesser than. But you have to be perfect in those games. This loss to the Raiders yesterday takes away any sort of cushion you would have.
Right. Going down the stretch, the pressure is going to be on for the Browns, because obviously that's going to be the goal in the second half of the season. Is every game is, where does this put us in the playoff hunt? And when you're playing in a division with the Ravens and the Steelers, who I don't know if you guys saw, but are looking like pretty good football teams, and all of a sudden the Bengals are playing better. Not saying that they're going to be in the mix, but you never know. This is a really challenging division, and even with the additional playoff team, the Browns are going to have to play better on both sides of the football and find a way, if Miles is out for any length of time, to be able to put some pressure on the quarterback, because defensively it's been sort of a rely on big play turnover type defense, and when you don't have your number one big play turnover guy on defense, you got to find some answers to be able to stop people and to be able to get off the field to get your offense the ball.
It is weird that it does feel like our defensive philosophy, and it's not just this year, and I still think the Grant Delpit injury is so much bigger than we have any idea in terms of the impact for what we want to do. Now, in the long run, if he comes back and he's fine, the fact that injury paved the way for us to acquire Ronnie Harrison, I think will ultimately be a win for the Browns in their long-term future, because the idea of Delpit and Harrison on the back end of this defense makes me very, very excited for a long time. But, Joe, it just doesn't seem like you can be a defense that counts on a turnover or one person doing something superhuman week after week after week and have success in the NFL. And when you're the defense that's allowed more first downs against you than any other in the league, despite the fact that you have 14 takeaways through 8 games, I don't know. It seems like if there aren't turnovers, we're going to struggle.
Well, the defense has survived on turnovers because that's what they have to survive on. We're not doing a good enough job overall on defense, stopping people, limiting their amount of rushing yards, taking away the big plays down the field in the passing game. And so you're saying, all right, what can we do, right? Oh, we can focus on trying to get turnovers, which is not sustainable in the NFL. It's not like every week you're going to be able to get in there and, force 2 or 3 turnovers of an offense. A lot of times, pretty soon offenses are going to come into the Browns game, and that's going to be their emphasis. Look, if the Browns can't force turnovers on us, we're going to score a lot of points. And so that's what everybody's mentality from the opponent is going to come into that game, and they're going to do a better job of it. One of my favorite quotes in coaching is, you get what you emphasize. If you emphasize everything, you get nothing. But if you emphasize ball security going against the Browns defense and they don't get any turnovers, the survey and the history has said that you're going to be able to score a lot of points and keep the ball away from their offense, which you mentioned properly, that I think once it Chubb and Austin Hooper are back, it changes who we are on offense. But if we can't get the ball back, it's not going to matter who's playing on offense.
Correct, because you can't score if you don't have the ball unless Ronnie Harrison continues to get pick sixes, which he almost had another one this weekend against the Raiders. Joe, one question about our offense, though, and I realize it was weather prohibitive, so let's just take a step back from it and just think about it philosophically. How difficult would it be to run this offense, which you know very well, without that field stretcher? Because in 14 for you guys, it was an undrafted free agent rookie, Taylor Gabriel, who ended up really opening the field up. Without Odell, I'm not sure where that comes from. Maybe Taywan Taylor, maybe Kaderil Hodge, but Taylor's a few years removed from his productive season in the league. Nobody else on the team has ever been over 500 yards receiving other than Jarvis Landry. You know, how do you run this offense without that guy?
Well, I think any offense is difficult when you're playing at 40-mile-an-hour winds and
Sure.
sleet and rain and snow, because throwing the football down the field is risky, even if you've got Josh Allen at quarterback or Aaron Rodgers who throws a tight spiral 80 yards down the field. It's just such a risk because once the ball gets up in the air, if you don't have a perfect spiral on it, it can quickly deteriorate into an end-over-end pass that's more like a punt for whoever can jump up there in a game of 500 and pick it off.
Yes.
But you do still have to have some guys that can run down the field and threaten the defense a little bit. But I think the highlight then is, okay, we need to really make our run game work in a situation where everybody in the stadium knows you're not going to be able to take 10 shots down the field. And unfortunately for the Browns, the Raiders did a better job in an obvious running situation like the weather conditions provided on Sunday. But I think running the football with the scheme in bad weather, it's a great scheme because what it provides is you can get those defenders to run sideways, and then you're able to make the cut when you want. And anytime the field conditions are a little poorer and the footing is a little bit more slippery, if you're making the cut first, you're at the advantage because then the time between the defense cutting after you've cut is longer. And so you get that little bit of time between you making the cut and then reacting to be able to get your shoulder pads down the field and to be able to fall forward at a very minimum for 4 yards, which is a productive play. And then when you put the bootlegs and nakeds off of that, it makes it really hard for defense because it's hard for them to start running like it's a run play, put the brakes on, and then retrace and get into their zone coverage. So I do think that this offense specifically, schematically, is very good in the weather, but you do have to become better at running the football in those obvious running situations, like I mentioned. And the Raiders' offensive line, they're kind of built for playing in bad weather. They're big, they're physical guys, and unfortunately our defensive line didn't stand up to the challenge, and they were getting pushed back most of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you feel the loss of Wyatt Teller. Hub has done a great job filling in, but you feel that. And Jed is the last couple of weeks, Joe, has struggled in the run game. There's just no other way to say it. It's just something that he struggled in a little bit going forward. And as we come to you guys with this question of the offense, so I'm going to have you guys act like you're Kevin Stefanski now. You've got a bye week. You got to make some tweaks to your offense. Where do you start, Joe? What do you try to do to get right over the next couple of weeks before you play Houston in 2 weeks?
Well, the bye week came at the right time because this is the opportunity where the statistics and the analysis really get put into overdrive because you're going to take every single formation you have and try to figure out, all right, what were we the best at? And who are we? What is our identity? What runs do we have the most success? And they'll categorize them by everything you can imagine. They'll watch them together as an offense and try to figure out, all right, what can we take that we're not good at and either get better or just cross it off the playbook. And then what are the things we think we do pretty well, and then what are the other counter plays that we can kind of build off of that? And so you're kind of taking a tree, bonsai tree, and you're molding it and shaping it. But specifically for the Browns, I think they need to get better at running the football when they have to. Like we talked about last weekend or this past game. It was bad conditions. Everybody saw that. I watched it on TV. So both sides knew that it was going to be a focus on running the football. And so how do we find running concepts? And what is it? Maybe it's technique. Maybe it's scheme. But what can we do in those situations when things get cold and nasty in the AFC North to be able to effectively run the football when you have to run the football? And I think that's where you start because Odell's not coming back. So, we talked about Kaderil Hodge maybe being a deep play threat. Hopefully he can kind of become that guy. But I think your down the field passing is going to be a little bit limited. And so focusing on This offense is all built on running the football. So we need to be a 4+ yards per carry and 100 yards on the ground every single week, or the rest of the offense doesn't work. And so I think you kind of put everything you've got into that basket and try to figure out how to make that work.
So I'll look at the passing game because even in this one, again, this is the weather, so throw that out. But we averaged 4.6 yards a carry, 22 rushes. They ran it 45 times in this one. It was just the plays. But the thing I want to work on more than anything, and I'm curious to get your take on this, Joe, is it feels to me watching these games now, we run and then, yes, we can hit those bootlegs off of it. But the whole goal of this offense, and I've heard you say this many times, Joe, is they have to defend every blade of grass. It feels like teams only need to defend the running game, so I would say a few yards within the line of scrimmage, the entire width of the field. But in the passing game, they really seem to only need to defend outside the numbers of whichever direction Baker is rolling primarily. Now, we've had a couple built very nicely off of that where we run leak or where we roll left and then throw back right. But we're not utilizing the middle of the field at all. It is non-existent in our passing game completely. And the middle of the field should be the easiest place to complete passes, especially if you're thinking about Northeast Ohio and you're thinking about November and December when the winds are whipping like they were. Obviously, that was an extreme case of it, but shorter passes, middle of the field, yards after the catch, that's where the Raiders made their living in these conditions. We completed 4 passes in between the numbers, which is a significant portion of the field. So I want to figure out how do we get, whether it's blocking schemes that create lanes for Baker to be able to see in the middle of the field, but we need to throw the ball to the middle of the field because we are not, as a passing offense, forcing teams to defend every blade of grass right now.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I'll drill down even more on my comment. I think maybe first and second down, you're getting the production at the end of the day statistically that you say that's good. Like, okay, 4.6 yards per carry, and we had over 100 yards. Yeah, okay, check the box. But when you look down at the third down attempts running the football, they're not effective enough at converting those third down and, let's say, 3 and less.
Yep.
And that's what you need to be able to do to be effective. The Browns are only 3 out of 10 on third down efficiency in this game. And I think if you're going to be a team that says, hey, we're going to run the football, we're going to open things up in our passing game based on our rushing the ball, you need to be able to convert a high percentage of those third and shorts, third and mediums running the football. And I don't think the Browns have been effective enough. So maybe they're going to go back and say, okay, schematically, we need to have some more direct runs and get better at those from a technique standpoint to be able to pick up those third downs. And then I think what you do have is you have an ability to be able to hit some shots down the field in the middle of the field on those third and shorts because teams are starting to have to try to take away what you do really well, which is to convert those third and shorts running the football.
All right, guys, let's switch to the other side of the ball, to the defensive side of the ball, and let's just put this one out there because while the cavalry is coming over the hill offensively in terms of we're going to get healthier offensively, defensively that's not the case, with the exception of Greedy Williams potentially, and hopefully Myles Garrett will be back to 100% or close by the time we play. Does Andrew Berry, Tuesday is the trade deadline, 4 o'clock. What can Joe Woods do with this defense? And does who it has, and does Andrew Berry need to make a move defensively here? Is that needed for this team to get to the stated goal of 10-6 and be in the middle of the postseason hunt, Joe?
I'd love for there to be some guy out there that we could pick up and plug in right now, and he would make a big difference. And maybe there is somebody out there, right, at this time of year, especially with the salary cap implications for next season, which if people haven't been paying attention, the salary cap's going to go down probably significantly because the salary cap is based on revenue from the year before, and the revenue this year obviously is way down because of the COVID crisis. And so there might be a lot of teams that are kind of thinking, okay, we've got some high-priced defensive players who are still good players, but we need to get rid of them because of cap issues. So maybe there's some guys that are out there that really aren't on the trading block, but a guy like Andrew Berry and his staff have been calling around and trying to figure it out. But I think if the Browns can add somebody in the secondary to really kind of shore up some of that pass coverage, that would make a huge difference for the Browns to be able to get a little bit more help against the rushing defense or for your rushing defense. Because right now what I'm seeing from Joe Woods and the defense is that they're so concerned about the ball going over their heads and guys throwing the football down the field that they're afraid to blitz. They're afraid to put more resources to stop the run. And unfortunately, our defensive line, who is generally pretty good at rushing the passer, is not very good at holding up against the run right now because they're just not built like that. They're not big run-stopping type guys. And so they're getting worn out because we're kind of having to sit back and prevent the down-the-field passing, which hurts our rushing defense. And in crappy weather like this, you give up over 200 yards rushing to the Raiders, and you really don't ever have a chance to get the ball on offense to really do anything.
Yeah, and this is a game that, remember, Andrew Billings was brought in here to be that guy. He opted out before this season, but if you're thinking about sticking a guy, 330 plus, this would have been the kind of game that, and one of the reasons Andrew Berry tried to bring Billings in. So that's a guy that's going to be added to the roster next year. When it comes to this trade deadline, I just don't see Andrew Berry, Kim Stefanski doing a 1 year rental on a veteran. If they can get a guy like Harrison, I say, of course they will, with multiple years. Because part of what you said, Joe, is you want to still be able to carry some of this money over to next year, which would maybe give you an opportunity to do a better job of re-signing your guys or being a player in free agency where you're making a longer-term investment into somebody.
Yeah, I don't think we're in any danger of all of a sudden Andrew Berry losing his principles and thinking, like, I'm going to mortgage the future for this season. I think they're very realistic. If the Browns make the playoffs, they could make a nice run, but they're really looking at this season as a building block for next season and the following season because they can see the trend line heading up. And the last thing you want to do is get one of these 1 year rental type guys where you only have them for 8 games because you got to be realistic, right? The Ravens and the Steelers right now are better than us and they're in our division. So for us, the goal is going to be not to win the division. It's going to be to try to get into the playoffs, maybe make some noise when you get there. But the type of player you'd want is a guy that can help you build for the future, like a guy who's got 2-3 years left on his contract. You wouldn't want one of those guys that the team is trying to unload who may still be a good player, but you're going to lose at the end of the season because he's going to go to free agency.
I'm just surprised, guys. I guess the reason I ask is the cost for some of these veterans that are moving is
so
really
cheap.
Next to nothing.
I agree.
Like I don't put, like, it's so minimal.
I would rather have quality players than 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. The numbers of those guys that pan out, statistically, it's very small. Now, if you do and turn a starter out of a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder, you obviously get somebody incredibly cheap for 4 years, that's the lottery ticket. So you only have to be good on those, every now and then, which is why some teams like to accumulate them, et cetera. Yeah. But yeah, I think, again, if you're a team that feels you're going to win it this year or is going all in, yeah, get rid of your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks for next year and get players who can help you right now. I just don't think we're necessarily in that boat, but those price tags certainly make it seem very tantalizing.
I mean, if you can find somebody that feel reasonably strong that we can get him on his last year of his deal, but we think he's going to like it here and he's going to want to re-sign and we have the money for it, like, great, that would be a great option. But I agree with you guys. I don't think that just getting somebody for this season going all in really is the right approach. And I'm pretty sure that Andrew Berry would not take that approach.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Always good talking to you, Joe. Appreciate your time, buddy.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on. I wish it was longer, but maybe next week.
Maybe next week.
What a bonus week next week. What a treat. You'll hear from Coach coming up here shortly. If you're looking to refinance or purchase home, Union Home Mortgage, their process is simple and straightforward. The loan officer keeps you in the loop all the way to the end zone. Visit unionhomemortgage.com to get a mortgage you'll rave about. Union Home Mortgage, promises kept. Union Home Mortgage Corp, NMLS 2229, is an equal housing lender. Coach Stefanski at the podium at the top of the hour. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
50 ESPN Cleveland.
All right, you're up.
Knowing one's limit is important, whether it's a snap count for a football player or a spending limit when you're playing the lotteries. If you'd like to gamble, set a limit beforehand and stick to it. If you want to learn more, go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips on how to keep gambling fun. We are awaiting Coach Stefanski at the podium, which should happen within the next minute or two. Lots to address from Coach, obviously, the first half of the season. This will be his only availability this week, I believe, correct? Just today? And that, or maybe could we have something later in the week? I suppose if there's a trade.
Potentially, yeah.
We have Coach.
All right, here is Coach Stefanski at the podium.
If you're all set, we're ready for your opening statement.
Okay.
Guys are both down.
As you can see, we're doing this virtually. Just felt like that was the right thing to do. We had a player report symptoms this morning and just thought it was prudent to have these meetings virtually, something that we're used to doing anyway. So players are meeting right now with their coaches to watch the tape. Injury-wise, update on Miles. Nothing structurally significant, so we should have him available definitely for the next ball game. Other than that, still you watch the tape, still disappointed, still frustrated with the performance, and we got to learn from it. There were things that you just can't do and expect to win, and we just didn't on really in any phase didn't do the little things, and when you don't do the little things, they add up to the big thing, and that's something that we're addressing with the players right now, and then we're gonna have to come out here on Wednesday. The players are off tomorrow with the election. All the buildings are closed tomorrow, and then we'll have the players back in on Wednesday for practice, and then they'll be off per the NFL's rules. They'll be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Coach. The first question is going to come from Mary Kay Cabot.
How much of a bullet do you feel like you dodged in some ways with getting that news back about Miles, that there was no structural damage? How much a relief for you, considering how well he's playing?
Yeah, Mary Kay, I think it's obvious how much of an impact he makes in these games. So happy that, like you said, we dodged a bullet. And then, we'll just need him to come back on Wednesday, see if he's ready to practice. If he's not, we'll have a few days here to rest and then get ready to roll next week.
Is that wrist any bit of a concern, or the ankle, or does he need this time to get everything kind of healed up?
I think he's like a lot of our players. 8 games into this thing, nobody's 100%, and you got all sorts of nicks and bruises and those type of things. So he's a warrior. He battles through these things, but certainly the rest should help all the guys.
Thank you.
Scott Patrick will have our next question.
Hey, Kevin, with the player reporting symptoms today, was there any reason to think that it was COVID as opposed to when Odell was sent home with the flu-like symptoms?
No, I think anytime, Scott, in this environment, when you're not feeling right and you call the trainer and you talk about your symptoms, we really can't mess around with that. So that's kind of what it was.
It wasn't like a loss of taste or smell that we kind of know is more COVID than not?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And you don't think anybody's going to have to quarantine like close contacts?
We'll get more information as we go, Scott. So I wouldn't rule anything out, but I'm hopeful.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Jeff Shadell, you're up next.
Hey, Kevin, you're not the first coach or team to have a game like that yesterday. So what do you think goes into that when the players just aren't focused, or whatever word you want to use?
Jeff, I don't think it was a lack of focus. The guys were ready to play. They did have a good week of preparation. We got beat. The other team beat us, and we're trying to look at the tape today and what are the areas that we feel like we can improve. But I don't know if it was. I can't tell you it was a lack of focus that led to some of those things.
Jay Trotter, we'll go to you.
Yeah, Kevin, what is your plan the rest of the week? I assume the players won't be in the building at all, so I guess it would have made sense to to do virtually today for that reason? Is that kind of what it looks like for you?
Yeah. Are you saying for the coaching staff?
No, for the players. I mean, the players are going to be away
barring any new developments. We anticipate having them in the building on Wednesday for practice. And other than that, the building can be open, but we can't require them to do anything the rest of the week.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Jake. Next up is Tony Grossi.
All right, Coach. Again, to educate me, in the pregame, you knew the wind was a trouble going toward the dog pound, and by deferring, you elected to choose that field going into the fourth quarter. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, Tony, that's something we talk about. When you defer, you know what the wind is doing at that moment at the coin toss. With the unpredictability of that wind, just felt like the best thing to do right there was get the ball, at halftime, and ultimately you have the wind likely for 2 of those 4 quarters. So you got to take advantage of it. Didn't work out yesterday, but I understand the thought process, and we'll continue to talk about those type of things.
And second of all, what will the coaches do this week?
Yeah, so today is all about yesterday. So we're trying to learn from yesterday's tape first, and then the rest of the week, with this bye right smack in the middle, you get an 8-game sample, and I think you can really pull everything apart and look at our schemes, look at what people are doing versus us, find out what we're good at, and maintain that and double down on that, and then find out the things that we're maybe not so good at. And that's just about understanding yourself, and then that will allow us to put a plan going forward. Really, you got to know yourself even better than the opponent does.
Thank you, Tony. We'll go to Daryl Ryder.
Hey, Coach, I want to ask you about your defense. A lot of the rankings, giving up first downs, yards, whatnot. You have had some bend but don't break situations in there, I understand as well. But just when you look at that side of the ball, have you, or is this something you're going to go through this week, but have you come up with something to maybe try and turn that side of the ball around as far as getting off the field, preventing those long 10 to 15 play drives that you guys have been giving up?
Yeah, Dara, I think as a team we have to improve. Sitting here at 5-3, we have to get better on all 3 phases. Obviously, there are things defensively that I know we have to get better at, and then we got to, like I said before, you got to double down on what you're good at. So we got to get takeaways, and we had our hands on one yesterday. The ball was in the air another time. The ball was on the ground another time. We didn't come up with it. So we got to make sure that we're playing to our strengths. But that is definitely something that we'll spend time looking at this week.
And I'll ask you, with the trade deadline tomorrow, how aggressive do you want to be? How aggressive do you feel you need to be to maybe get a piece or two to shore up an area you feel you might need some help in?
Yeah, those are conversations that I'm having with Andrew and his staff, and we constantly are talking. And I think they'll work real hard to see if anything makes sense for us. But I'll leave that up to Andrew and leave that one in his court.
Thank you, Daryl. Nate Ulrich is up next.
Hey, Kevin, do you have a plan for Nick Chubb, Austin Hooper, and Wyatt Teller this week? Like, will you try to get those guys practicing? What are the statuses, would you say, for those?
Yeah, I think Hooper will definitely be back for the next ball game. But with Wyatt and Nick, I think they're both progressing. They're hitting every landmark, milestone that they need to hit in terms of their rehab. So we'll just figure that out as these days go by. But feel real good about Austin, and then I'll know more each one of these days on the other guys.
Thanks, Nate. Marla Ridenour will come to you next.
Yeah, Coach, one quick thing about the virtual, did you have to tell the Raiders that you had a guy sick? Just curious.
I know we contacted the league right away, so I would guess that conversation occurred.
Okay. And I want to, while you're going over, kind of what you do best and all that, are you going to reevaluate anything with the coaching staff, how you operate, those kind of things?
Yeah, I think when you get to this point in the season at week 8 and you do a self-scout, you look at everything. So if we can do anything better, if like you said, yeah, we'll look at everything.
Have you thought anything about your play calling to this point? I'm sure you've said multiple times you could be better. Will you look at that too, or is it?
Yeah, yes, we'll look at everything. I know there's definitely, like I talk about, knowing yourself. You have to understand tendencies, and that certainly falls under the play calling. You have to understand what they know about you, and you got to use those tendencies to your advantage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Back to Scott Petrick.
Hey, Coach. The defense on 3rd and 4th down, and we've talked about it before, struggling to get off the field. So I'm sure you can't always rely on a takeaway. So can you put your finger on anything on those 2 critical downs that you guys have really struggled with?
Yeah, Scott, I think it's like anything. It's a multifaceted. There's things that we can do better in technique. There's things that we can do better with schematically. I think we can put the guys in some spots. So it's never one thing. And I think that's what we're going to work real hard at, to make sure that we have some tangible things moving forward that we feel we can improve in that area.
There's one example from yesterday that stood out. I think it was 3rd and 18, and they run the screen, and they get so it's 4th and manageable. What did you see on that play that you said shouldn't have let happen?
Yeah, that was really disappointing. You should feel good about getting off the field there, and they out executed us. We need to fit that better than we did, and those are the type of things. Those are the little things that very quickly become the big thing.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Tom Withers, your line is open.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Coach. Coach, I know you wouldn't never be satisfied with 5-3 because you always feel like you can do better. But as you do this 8-week assessment, what are you most pleased with in terms of the progress that you've made? I know you wanted to be patient this year and this was going to take some time, but where have you made some significant growth already?
Yeah, it's so hard for me, Tom, to go there. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, you're 5-3, but we just want to keep getting better. So there are things I know offensively, defensively, and teams. I know that there are certain areas that I think we're good at, but we need to get better at those things. But it's really hard without spending some time with the coaches this week and really pull this thing apart to go there right now.
Okay, we'll talk to you on Thursday or Friday about that then, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you, Tom. Tony Grossi, you're up.
Sorry. Kevin, 2 of those replay reviews went against you. Looking at them frame by frame, were they the correct calls? The one on Landry and one on Renfro.
Yeah, honestly, Tony, when those things happen and it goes to New York, you wait for the result and you wait for them to come out and announce it, and it's the classic. It is what it is. I'm never going to get into what coulda, shoulda happened there.
And I know it's tough to throw the ball, tough to catch the ball on a day like that, but the diversity in the passing game wasn't there. I mean, 11 targets for Landry and 3 for Higgins, none for Peoples-Jones. What accounted for that?
I would tell you coverage. That's the design of the play. But I don't think we went into it saying it was going to be, those targets were going to come out like that, but they did. We'll work real hard to make sure that we're trying to get all the guys involved. That's part of our job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Mary Kay Cabot, you're up.
Just in terms of Baker at the midpoint, what sorts of things do you think that he has really shown a lot of good progress in, maybe in your new scheme, possibly just in terms of playing faster, understanding the terminology type of things? And then also, will you use some of this time to identify how you can also play better to his strengths, call a better game for him and that sort of thing?
Without a doubt. I need to, when you put the game plans together, you're obviously trying to do what all your players do best. And particularly the quarterback should be at the forefront of those type of discussions. But I think Baker's doing a nice job of, operating, getting us in the right checks, getting us in and out of the huddle, using his cadence yesterday, getting in the jump off sides a few times. So he's progressing. He's making plays. And I know he's going to tell you he thinks there's more plays to be made. And I do believe that he's going to continue to improve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. We'll take three more. Jake Trotter, Scott Petrick, Tony Grossi. Jake, you're up first.
Yeah, Kevin, is there any update on Greedy? I mean, is it possible you might not have him this season? And then will that affect or have any impact on the way you guys look at the trade deadline tomorrow?
Yeah, Jake, I don't have an update on Greedy. Just going back to last time we talked about him, he's working very, very hard. So we're just going to keep seeing if he progresses over the next few weeks. How that impacts the trade deadline, I don't. That's really Andrew and his staff could probably answer that better than I could.
Thank you, Jake. Scott Petrick.
Hey, Kevin, it seems like Jarvis has had some uncharacteristic drops the last few weeks. Do you think his rib injury is affecting him there?
It's a possibility. I know he battles, and you said it's uncharacteristic. He made a great catch there late in the game. I have high expectations for him. He knows that, and he's battling, I would put it. But to say that they're related, I don't know.
Stand by. Last question.
Thank you, Scott. Tony Grossi for a final question.
Okay. Kevin, after the game, you admitted the team got pushed back on the line of scrimmage defensively. Is that, do you think, an attitude problem for just that game, or is it run deeper than that? Is it a physical problem, schematic problem, personnel problem?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an attitude problem at all. I think in that game, we didn't stop the run. I think we got at times out of our gap. Our technique wasn't great. When your technique's not great, that's when you are going to get knocked back. We need to fit the run. When you fit the run, it's just like anything. You need 11 guys to do their job. So there were certain things throughout the game that contributed to that, but it's all correctable in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Coach, thank you for the time.
You're up.
Okay,
all right, good stuff from Coach there. We will react to some of the things we heard specifically on the injury front coming up here shortly. Before we do that, though, I want to talk to you about my friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Look, you're going to go to any home improvement need, you go to them at Weather Seal. It's November. You know what that means. Snow, ice, wind. It's moving in. Don't get stuck in the cold with that leaky roof. Let the team at Weather Seal help with their great roof offer. Just $1 down, 7 years, 0% financing can get you a new roof. You know your home needs it. Take care of it. Have some peace of mind this winter. Don't delay. Call Weather Seal today, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. The sale ends at the end of this month. That's November 30th. It's with approved credit. Prior sales are excluded on that. WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Give them a call today at 877-351-SEAL. We'll get some reaction to what Coach had to say on the injury front, especially. That is coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Nominations for the 2020 Helmets program now being accepted. Zenith invites you to nominate your Ohio high school to receive $25,000 worth of new Zenith helmets. Visit promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. Most notable, no structural damage for Myles Garrett. I mean, that's the huge takeaway here. He's no structural damage there going forward. That's the news of the day, my friend.
That is, and it's good news, fortunately, because I got to tell you, it just feels, listening to that, it was like we were presiding over the funeral of the 2020 Cleveland Browns, which we're not. This team's 5-3. Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
It's very much, it's not just that, it's sometimes in the fan base and that you see it where it's almost like the misery is where it's most comfortable, is like in that world, and it's just kind of the way that it is. There is not anybody, and the only thing we can speak for is our show. There's nobody here that was acting like this wasn't last year when we were doing World's Team, Pure Joy, all that stuff. Like, this is a very measured. We're having fun, but and why not? Because you ought to be able to live a little bit. But this was a very measured approach to this season.
Yeah.
How are we judging this team as a team that can make the playoffs? Can this team still make the playoffs? Yes. In fact, there's a 53% chance that they will make the playoffs based on where they are right now. That's pretty good. That's better than you've been at 8 games in God knows how long, since what, 94? So you're in a great spot in terms of being able to accomplish all of the things you want to be able to accomplish, and you're going to get healthier. You heard him, that Teller and Chubb are progressing nicely. These are incredibly positive things. Hooper will be back. The schedule is very manageable going forward. You play 3 Super Bowl contenders in your last 8 games. Other than that, you're going to play a bunch of non-playoff teams. And so you should be able to take care of your business there. You got to be able to, I want to say maybe Doug wrote this at cleveland.com. I could be wrong. Let's enjoy don't let the fact that you're not a Super Bowl contender make you not enjoy this season.
Right. Enjoy the ride.
Like it's
okay.
Enjoy the fact that you're winning more games than you're losing. Enjoy the fact that you're going to be playing meaningful games in December. Enjoy the fact that you can make a run at the postseason, and you can build off of that. That's what teams do. Folks, like, this doesn't come in a snap of a fingers, and all of a sudden you go from not making the playoffs to winning the Super Bowl. No, this takes time. Look at Baltimore. Baltimore went 14-2. They have the MVP of the league. Their singular goal is to win the Super Bowl. They're pulling out all the stops to try to be able to do it. They lost yesterday at home to Pittsburgh to drop their second game. We're not there yet.
Right.
We're not at a point where we want it. We've played Pittsburgh and Baltimore. We know we're not at that level yet, but we're building towards it. But don't not enjoy this just because you're not that.
Correct.
That would be my advice.
And that's why I think it's going to be, you've got to enjoy this. And if you're thinking about trade deadline and if the Browns are going to be players, you're looking to find something that's like what you got with Ronnie Harrison, where you find a good young player that you could actually pick up a piece for your core going forward for a very nominal price tag. The Browns already did that. Let's not forget, the Browns have already made an in quote-unquote season trade in bringing him in. That's all you're looking for. And, yes, you've got to enjoy this ride. We've won 5 games. We're 5-3. I did the show over a 3-year period where we totaled 4 wins. Okay? 3 seasons, 48 attempts, 4-44. We're 5-3.
Not a lot of joy there.
Are there issues? Is this a perfect team? No, it's not a perfect team. Of course there are issues with this team, and we're seeing it right now. Third down defense. We need to, get better at that. We need to be able to throw the football around the field a little bit more effectively. We're going to have to do it without Odell Beckham Jr., but this is a team that still has, I thought, shown a lot of grit all year long. They've shown a lot of resilience. They've shown a lot of clutch meter late in games. And you're not going to get it done every week. They're right now, only the Steelers have won every game?
That's it.
That's it.
That's the list.
So 5-3 is good. And, of course, we want it to be better. We want to have that good second half of the season. And this one doesn't make – you wish that wasn't leading into the bye week. If the Bengals game were leading into the bye week, it would be 2 weeks of pure joy. The defense, fine, but we came through and you'd be feeling great. It's just the timing of it now. You have 2 weeks to marinate on it, and maybe that's good. Maybe that will sit with our players, and they'll say, okay, we got to come back. We don't have to leave our beds until after Thanksgiving. So let's go ahead and run off a couple of wins here coming off of this bye week.
Absolutely. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. You can apply online at weshiring.com. Mike Tannenbaum, former Jets general manager, will join the program coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. The customers, employees, and communities, they are all part of the family. You can check them out at rumpke.com to learn more. Now let's head out on the Fifth Third Money Line. Our great friend Mike Tannenbaum joining us, ESPN's NFL front office insider, former general manager as well. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. Let's jump right in with what you think will happen between now and tomorrow at 4. Do you think this will be an active deadline with the fact that a cap is going way down next year? We all know that. Or do you think teams will stand pat? Where do you think this one will be in the next 24 hours?
Hey, guys, great to be with you. I think it's kind of what we've seen today, some, smaller deals, Quan Alexander, Desmond King. I think we should keep an eye on some of these receivers. What's that? Also, the Houston receivers, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, I can see one of those getting possibly moved. And then, as it relates to Cleveland, maybe David Njoku because of his contract status, I can see him being a possibility as well.
If you were in Andrew Berry's shoes right now, what would your approach be? This is a team that is good, certainly could make it to the playoffs, but isn't necessarily at this point in the class of the elites like we're seeing the Steelers and the Ravens make moves to try to win Super Bowls now. So what's your philosophy on a team that's where the Browns are as it approaches the trade deadline?
Keep doing what you're doing. I thought they stacked together a pretty good draft class. In particular, I think not only you have to hit on the top guys like a Jedrick Wills, but I love Peoples-Jones in the 6th round. I think he has a real chance. Harrison Bryant saw him play a number of times at FAU. So I like what they're doing. I like the direction they're going. And I think you want to be prudent because I think if you're opportunistic, you guys already alluded to it, the cap's going to go down next year. That'll probably create some cap casualties. And I think maybe there's an opportunity here, but the one guy I would see if I could get real value for would be Njoku, would be a guy I would consider moving on from.
Mike, have we seen a philosophical change in the NFL over the last 5 years, and in regard to how we break down quarterback play? I think about what Arizona did with Rosen, and then going right the next draft with Murray. I think about the Dolphins yesterday playing Tua. They're clearly better with Fitzpatrick from a winning games now perspective than what we got yesterday out of Tua. But they all but admitted, look, we got to see what we have in this guy. I think about the Jets, and they just drafted Sam Darnold, and now in position to draft Trevor Lawrence. Are quarterbacks viewed differently now than they were 5-10 years ago even?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Going back a number of years, I was at the Jets. We had Chad Pennington. He sat on the bench for 2 years, and he came in to replace Vinny Testaverde. And I think one of the many reasons he played well was he, had a couple of years to sit. That just doesn't seem to happen as much now. Obviously, Jordan Love of Green Bay is a first-round pick, and barring something unforeseen, he'll be sitting for a while. But I think that's fair. I think they get out there sooner and they're evaluated sooner. Josh Rosen was a top 10 pick, and he lasted for about 5 minutes in Arizona, gets traded to Miami. Now he's on Tampa's practice squad.
It is a stunning thing, and you're seeing, as Beau said, you could see teams go ahead and double down on first-round quarterbacks, sometimes in consecutive years or certainly quickly thereafter. I wanted to ask just from you look at the landscape of the league right now, it feels like there are a few, a set number of Super Bowl contenders. There are teams in the middle that I would lump the Browns into that can get to the playoffs and maybe make a little noise. And then there is a large group that are just done. Do you think we're going to start to see, salary dumps like the NBA? We're starting to see teams say, you know what, it's okay, I'll get out this year and try to restructure on the fly. Is that something we're going to see more of, do you think, beginning certainly this year and then in the future?
Well, it takes two sides to every story. Ironically, Cleveland was involved with one of them.
Of course.
A couple of years ago, with Brock Osweiler. So we'll see. I think it takes two to tango, obviously, and there's going to be some team that's going to need to absorb the room to do that. Because, again, in our sport, once a veteran's on opening day, their salary is basically guaranteed. So beyond that, you're going to need a team that they feel like they're on the cusp. So maybe it's Seattle looking for another defensive player. For example, they take on Carlos Dunlap. I think that would have to be the dynamic you're talking about.
And will you help I think fans see these trades, good players going for low draft picks. And we all know historically low draft picks, I'm talking 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, day 3 picks, don't have a huge success rate. But they seem to be so valuable that when you see a good player traded, it's usually for a late pick, and it still blows people's mind. How can you get this good of a player for that late of a pick? Why does this kind of inequity, I would say, exist in the system? And from a GM's perspective, why do you want to keep those picks as opposed to bringing in quality players with them?
Yeah, well, philosophically, if it was a reasonable priced player, I always wanted the player over the pick because it was a certainty. Now, with that said, I think one of the ones you may be alluding to is, just in the last 24 hours, Avery Williamson, who's a good player, goes for basically the swap of a 5th and a 7th in 2022, which seems like nothing. The only thing I would say is sometimes you want the picks as part of a package to have flexibility to move up or down. But sure. I agree with the premise, which is it does seem like there's no way most of the time you're going to get a good enough player as Avery Williamson. The only other thing you would say is if you're the Jets, you're basically, you're out of the race this year, and Avery Williamson's not going to be on your team next year. So this is a way to at least maximize the value.
Mike Tannenbaum, our guest on the Fifth Third Money Line, former NFL general manager, ESPN NFL front office insider. From a big picture perspective, and Nathan asked you the question about all of the teams who aren't in it, and there's a lot of them. I think going into last week, I think there were 10 teams that had between 0 and 2 wins, which is a high number, and a lot of teams it seemed like they had just punted. Do you think, big picture-wise, heading out over the next 5, 6, 7 years, and this is something we see in baseball, we see it in the NBA, where it's almost like if you can't win a championship, we don't want to play. And we've never had that in the NFL. We've never had that in the NFL. And now adding another playoff team, usually it's, just try and get the playoffs, try and break through. Now it's almost like if we can't win a Super Bowl, we're out. That's kind of the feeling it seems like. Is that just this year, Mike, or do you think that's a bigger trend that could be happening?
Well, I think the big difference between the NBA and the NFL is that you could be a wild card team and go on this run and get to places you don't deserve. And that happened to me. In 1999, we were an 8-7 team with a first-year head coach in Rex Ryan. And at halftime, Peyton Manning goes out of a game where they're dominating us. Their backup goes in, a guy named Curtis Painter, fumbles. We stumble into the playoffs. And somehow win 2 wild card games, and next thing you know, 2 playoff games. Next thing you know, we're in the AC championship game, winning 9 games as a regular season with an average Mark Sanchez. So I think the big difference is that once you're in, it's a one-game situation, and you just never know what's going to happen with that one game.
Right, the ball bounces here, a turnover here, turnover there, and you can go on that run. I mean, I remember the year the Giants won it recently. They were the last team in and ended up winning out the 4 straight in a row and beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Mike, when you mentioned from the Browns' perspective, you mentioned Njoku. What would you be looking to get in compensation if you were the Browns?
I would hope for a 2, but probably settle for a 3. He's young, he's talented. With that said, for whatever reason, he hasn't lived up to what he's done. Now, with that said, I think the Browns have done a really nice job. They have 2 other tight ends behind him, in Hooper and Bryant that are good NFL tight ends. So I think they're dealing from a position of strength. But if he's not a cultural fit for Coach Stefanski and he's complaining, I would move on, because sometimes, too, when you're in the first year of your program, which Kevin is, why not say, hey, I'm sending a message. This is what I stand for. And if you don't want to be here, that's okay. And sometimes, you use these opportunities to make trades to send messages to your locker room.
Mike, one thing that we were so impressed with Andrew Berry in the offseason was he had a plan and he executed that plan. Had to get better on the offensive line, so get Conklin, they draft Wills. Needed to get better at tight end to run the type of offense that Kevin Stefanski wanted to run, and so they went out and got Austin Hooper. Had a really nice draft. Wish Grant Delpit wouldn't have got hurt, or it could have been an extraordinary draft, we do believe. So now that he's really balancing 2 things here, and you've lived this. There is pressure, I think, from the fan base, and you can't. My guess is you can't listen to that. I'm sure that would be your advice, but to add something here, like get us something, especially on the defensive side, all the while maintaining your big picture. When you were in those spots, how did you keep the focus on your big plan, especially early in your tenures?
Yeah, and I was really fortunate. I had a lot of success early on. Went to the playoffs multiple times early with Coach Mangini and Coach Ryan, and there's no doubt that helped me with my career. And I think the key is, and I'm speaking from experience here, is you want to win for today and develop for tomorrow. And you want to go ahead and win 8, 9, 10 games, if I'm Kevin and Andrew, because you want to establish your credibility. You're young in your career. You're given these tremendous opportunities. And I think, and I learned this from Coach Parcells, which is this whole notion, guys, of you want to hold the fort and build the fort, because you want to be able to say we stand for something. And sometimes when you're saying that, hey, we're a 3-year rebuild or a 4-year rebuild, it's hard to establish credibility. And it's great to have cap room, and it's great to have draft choices, but you also want to have a culture, and you also want to have a standard. And they're doing a really good job of that. So I think what they're doing is appropriate. I don't think you have to go out and, mortgage 2 first-round picks and overpay for someone. But I think what you also want to do is not just give away players indiscriminately and say, hey, we're going to have great cap room next year or the year after, because, and look, the Cleveland fan base is probably fatigued by that by now. And, wins are important and standards are important.
Mike, when you think about the Browns' position, right now the Steelers are undefeated. Lamar Jackson is the reigning MVP of the league, and Joe Burrow looks like he is going to be really, really good for the Cincinnati Bengals for a long, long time. You were in the division with the Jets, obviously with the New England Patriots. How much is what you do based on what's going on in your division? And for the Browns, that means, you have one aging quarterback, one young one who is more of a runner than a thrower right now, and then one who looks like he is going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL for a long time. All different styles, all in your division.
Yeah, I think what you're looking at there is basically how do you win your division? And in my office, I always had two boards. One was like, what our roster look like today and next year, and one was looking at every starter in the division. And you have to think about that every day, because without winning your division, it's really hard to get to where you want to go. And if I'm the Cleveland Browns, hey, how do I defend Joe Burrow? How do I defend Lamar Jackson? Because those guys are not going away. And obviously Roethlisberger is close to the end, but you literally think about that every single day. And your linebackers better be athletic enough to play in space to defend Lamar Jackson. If they're big and slow, you're not going to get to where you want to go.
Mike, you're the best. We
Awesome.
know your time is very valuable, and we thank you for giving us some of it today and making us smarter. Thanks, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, that is Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN NFL Front Office Insider, former NFL GM. And a reminder, all guests who appear on CBD do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. Lots to come, including a score. Not great week for the scores, though, kids.
No,
Not great week.
no.
Came back to the middle a little bit. Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here from my great friends at Raising Cane's. On game day, go for the win with Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Stack that roster with delicious hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce. Huddle up with crispy, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, and buttery Texas toast. Top it all off, freshly made tea and lemonade. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, a proud sponsor of Ohio High School Association and Ohio State Athletics. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers certainly is one love. How about that week? How about that little shot right in the chin? The NFL delivered the scores.
Well, we had discussed as we were going up I think we were still on the air when I said we took every single favorite. Like, that just doesn't work. And clearly the score said, yeah, you dopes. You can't take every favorite.
There were some of the, well, listen, up until this point, we've done spectacularly. There were some of the most befuddling scores I've ever seen. Like the Bengals really hammering the Titans. Hammering them. The Vikings. I mean, Dalvin Cook all of a sudden was Red Grange. He's really good.
He's so
but
good.
5 touchdowns? I mean, crazy. And really putting it to the Packers. There was the Chargers have been up 16 points 5 times this season and given it up all 5. Only once have they gone on to win. 4 losses after being up by 16. All of these we would have had right in the normal circumstances. We picked all of these. It was wild. It was really wild, and it was honestly was made like with that Sunday nighter sitting out there. I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't think I'm going to give you any more of my time, NFL. I've seen enough.
And now tonight's not necessarily a must-see matchup. Fortunately, all my fantasy football games are wrapped up with a nice little bow on them. In fact, Dalvin Cook and Giovanni the Mustache Bernard, key to my victories.
Great stash for him, isn't it?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Boy, he had 2 touchdowns.
If there's anything else.
He's been a better Joe Mixon than Joe Mixon.
Yeah, he has. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was just crazy. No, that was about it. There
was enough.
Gibby, what do we have tonight?
Can I interest you in Tampa Bay and the Giants? Tampa Bay 5-2. Kind of a trap game maybe for Tampa Bay. Not in the fact that they could lose, but you got to be careful because on the brink here, a Sunday night tilt hosting New Orleans for the NFC South lead. So
a little look past.
Don't want to get caught looking ahead, but the Buccaneers on the road in New York tonight.
Jeez.
I'm not, you can't interest me in this one, to be honest. Not that interested in it.
Sad.
But just because.
Maybe because you're trending down.
No.
No.
You know what? Listen, I'm still above 500.
Safe.
We're safe. We had the cushion. That's what we needed. Sometimes you need a
built-in cushion.
Week 8 was a bad week for football, period. Browns lose. Scores not great. No joy. But tonight, I'm done with it. Even though the Bucs are the vastly superior team. I don't think they're not going to really apply themselves. And all of a sudden, just late in the game, Darius Slayton's going to make a catch. It's going to just slide right in. And all of a sudden, you're going to look up and you're going to say, how did this happen? How is it 34-21 Bucs? Was that right on? Was
35.
that right on?
Yeah, pretty much.
34.
Bucs.
22.
Bucs. No, you're fine. You were fine on where you were.
Oh, thank you.
Well, no, you said 34-21, right?
Yeah.
That's no.
Yeah.
I want to be 34-22 just to be safe.
Okay. 35-20. I just can't.
It's much safer.
This just could just be stubbornness. But come on, you're 2 touchdowns better.
At least.
Come on, Bucs. You're at least 2 touchdowns better. Act accordingly. Act like you've been there before. For crying out loud. By the way, have you guys seen the movie Snatch? The fantastic Guy Ritchie film with Brad Pitt and Bricktop? Do you remember when, and this is what I feel like when Gibby takes shots at us about our betting record. Do you remember when Mickey is supposed to take the fall in the first fight for Bricktop for Turkish, and he doesn't, and Bricktop is walking off, and one of the guys goes, thanks for the tip, Bricktop, and Bricktop grabs him, throws him up, if you ever stop me again while I'm walking,
1 minute.
I can't say the rest of it. But that's how I feel like when people are like, well, you guys didn't do too good with the scores. We're 30 games over 500. Come on.
Relax.
Some people have bad weeks. Some people get wasted with Guy Ritchie in a bar in L.A.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Put it in the Gibby files.
Come on. Can we please have a Gimme Files episode?
Oh,
of this
my
show
goodness.
at some
We need
point?
it.
We need it. All right, kids. Look, we were hoping it was 6-2 as well.
30-3
is pretty good at the midway point of this team. We'll take a look at where we are, where we need to go over the course of the following programs this week, and we are back tomorrow for more of that. The next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.